He watched his entire pack burn when he was 10 years old. For 15 years, he wandered alone. No name. No home. No reason to keep breathing except spite. Then he saw her. She was promised to another alpha. She didn't know he existed. She definitely didn't know he was her fated mate. But the moment her scent hit him across that crowded room, his dead wolf, silent for 15 years, howled one word: mine. She belonged to someone else. He was nobody. The bond was impossible. Love didn't care. Hey, gorgeous souls, welcome back to Eliana's Romance Library, your home for the fiercest mates and the most dominant alphas. Before we dive into today's story, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me, where in the world are you listening from? I love seeing just how global this wolf pack has become. And if you want early access to new stories before anyone else, plus exclusive bonus content, join our channel membership. Hit that join button below and become part of the inner circle. All right, enough from me. Get comfortable, grab your snacks. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Ghost. I had exactly $47 to my name when I walked into Ember Ridge territory. $47, a backpack with 2 changes of clothes, and 15 years of practice at being invisible. Not a bad survival kit, all things considered. I'd made it work with less. There was a winter in the Northern Territories when I'd survived on stolen scraps and sheer stubbornness for 3 months. $47 felt like wealth compared to that. The road leading into pack territory was well maintained, smooth asphalt giving way to packed gravel, lined with trees that had been deliberately planted to create an impressive entrance. Everything about this place screamed money, power, stability. The kind of pack that had existed for generations and planned to exist for generations more. I didn't belong here, but I didn't belong anywhere, so that was nothing new. The compound was bigger than most I'd drifted through. Prosperous. The kind of pack that had enough food to waste and enough wolves to spare for guard duty. The main house was visible from half a mile away, a sprawling estate of stone and timber that looked like it had grown organically from the mountainside. Smoke curled from multiple chimneys. Wolves moved between buildings with purpose, their laughter and conversations carrying on the wind. Community, family, home. Words that meant nothing to me anymore. They barely glanced at me when I approached the work gate, another drifter looking for labor. They saw dozens like me every month, the packless, the lost, the broken. Wolves who'd fallen through the cracks of society and now wandered from territory to territory, trading manual labor for a few meals and a place to sleep. Name? The guard didn't look up from his clipboard. He was young, maybe 19, with the soft look of someone who'd never known real hardship. His uniform was crisp, his boots were polished, he'd probably never gone a day without knowing where his next meal was coming from. I didn't resent him for it. I'd stopped resenting people for having what I'd lost a long time ago. Resentment took energy, and energy was better spent on survival. Riven. Pack? None. That got a flicker of attention. His pen paused. His nostrils flared slightly, scenting me, trying to read what I was. Packless wolves were either dangerous or pathetic. Rogues who'd been cast out for crimes, or omegas too weak to hold a place in any hierarchy. I'd cultivated pathetic down to an art form. Slumped shoulders, downcast eyes. The body language of a wolf who'd given up on dominance fights before they started. I made myself small, unthreatening, forgettable. It was a survival mechanism I'd perfected over 15 years of drifting. The guard's interest faded. I was categorized, filed away, dismissed. "We need hands in the stables," he said, already looking past me to the next arrival. "Talk to Brennan. He'll sort you." And just like that, I was inside. I walked through the compound with my head down, cataloging exits and escape routes out of habit. The main path was cobblestone, worn smooth by generations of feet. Pack members passed me without acknowledgement. I was beneath their notice, which was exactly how I wanted it. A group of pups ran past, shrieking with laughter, chasing each other in some game that seemed to involve a lot of tackling and very few rules. Their mothers called after them with fond exasperation. An elderly wolf sat on a porch, whittling something from a block of wood, his weathered hands steady and sure. Normal. Safe. Boring. I wondered what that felt like. The stables were at the eastern edge of the compound, far enough from the main house to be forgettable, close enough to matter during winter storms. The building was large, well-constructed, smelling of hay and horse and the particular mustiness of old wood. A dozen stalls lined each side, most occupied by horses that looked better fed than I'd been in years. I found Brennan in the tack room, organizing bridles with the methodical precision of someone who'd done the same task 1,000 times. He was older, maybe 60, with a gruff face and hands like leather. He smelled like hay and resignation, a wolf who'd found his place in the world and made peace with it, even if that place was shoveling horse manure. New hand? He looked me over with eyes that missed nothing. You know horses? Enough. Enough to muck stalls? Yes. Good. That's all I need. He jerked his thumb toward the back of the building. Hayloft's got space. You can sleep there. Meals are at the main kitchen. Servants' entrance around back. Don't cause trouble, don't steal anything, and we won't have problems. Within an hour, I had a job mucking stalls and a spot in the hayloft to sleep. Perfect. I'd be gone before anyone learned my name. That was the plan, anyway. It lasted exactly 3 days. I settled into the routine with the ease of long practice, wake before dawn, feed the horses, muck the stalls, exercise the animals that needed it, avoid conversation, avoid eye contact, avoid anything that might make someone remember my face. The work was hard but mindless, exactly what I needed. When my hands were busy, my mind could drift. When my body was exhausted, sleep came easier, and the nightmares stayed quieter. On the 3rd day, everything changed. I was elbow-deep in horse muck, my back aching from hours of shoveling, sweat dripping down my spine despite the cool morning air. The horse in the next stall, a bad-tempered mare named Thistle who'd already tried to bite me twice, was stamping restlessly. I was thinking about nothing. That was the goal. Keep the mind empty. Keep the memories locked away. Survive another day. Then the scent hit me. Wildflowers. Thunderstorms. Something electric that made every hair on my body stand up. It came from nowhere. One moment I was shoveling manure, the next my entire nervous system was on fire. The scent wrapped around me like a living thing, invaded my lungs, my blood, my bones. It was the most intoxicating thing I'd ever experienced. My wolf, silent for 15 years, dormant so long I'd almost forgotten it existed, exploded awake inside my skull. Mate. The force of it staggered me. I grabbed the stall door, knees buckling, heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. The shovel clattered to the ground. Thistle whinnied in alarm, but I couldn't focus on her, couldn't focus on anything except mate, mine. Claim her now. The voice wasn't a voice. It was an instinct, a compulsion, a biological imperative screaming through every cell in my body. My wolf, that silent, dormant thing I'd almost convinced myself didn't exist, was suddenly, violently, overwhelmingly awake. And it wanted. I turned toward the scent. She was walking across the stable yard. Dark hair caught up in a casual braid, a few strands escaping to frame her face. A simple dress that probably cost more than everything I owned, the fabric flowing around her legs as she moved. She walked like someone who'd never had to rush anywhere, because the world waited for her, not the other way around. Even from this distance, I could see the confidence in her posture, the intelligence in her eyes, the subtle defiance in the set of her jaw like she was constantly pushing back against invisible constraints. She was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. My wolf howled. Mate, go to her, claim her, mark her, make her ours. I gripped the stall door so hard the wood creaked. My knuckles went white. Every instinct I possessed was screaming at me to move, to cross that distance, to take what was mine. She walked right past without a single glance. The stable yard might as well have been empty for all the attention she paid it. Her mind was clearly elsewhere, her expression distant, preoccupied. She didn't see me, didn't sense me, didn't feel the bond that was currently tearing me apart from the inside. I watched her disappear into the main compound, my wolf howling with confused rage, my hands shaking against the rough wood of the stall door. Mate. After 15 years of nothing, no pack, no family, no connection, the bond had finally found me. And she hadn't felt a thing. Of course she hadn't. I was a packless omega, a nobody, a ghost who'd been drifting through the world since I was 10 years old. My wolf was dormant, barely present, registering as the weakest possible classification. To her wolf, I didn't even exist on the radar. But to mine, she was everything. I stood there for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. My heart refused to slow down. My wolf refused to quiet. The scent of her lingered in the air like a haunting, and I breathed it in, despite knowing I shouldn't. Wildflowers and thunderstorms, electricity and grace. Mine. That's the beta's daughter. Brennan's voice cut through the chaos in my head. I hadn't heard him approach, a dangerous lapse in awareness that should have alarmed me more than it did. Nadia, he continued, leaning against the stall door across from mine. Future Luna. The words landed like physical blows. Beta's daughter. Future Luna. She's engaged to Alpha Callum of Thornwood Pack, Brennan continued, oblivious to the way each word was destroying me. Big ceremony in a few weeks. Political match. Uniting two of the largest packs in the region. Everyone's talking about it. Engaged. She was engaged, which meant she was promised to someone else, which meant I needed to leave. Tonight. I should pack my bag right now and walk out the same gate I came in. $47 could get me to the next territory. I'd survived 15 years without a mate. I could survive 15 more. The bond was one-sided. She hadn't felt anything, couldn't feel anything, because to her wolf I was nothing. It would be like I'd never existed. You all right? Brennan was watching me with something that might have been concern. You look like you've seen a ghost. I am a ghost, I thought. I've been a ghost for 15 years. Fine, I managed. Just need some water. He nodded, accepting the lie easily. Don't forget the feed for the west paddock. Those horses get ornery if they're not fed on schedule. He walked away. I stood there, frozen, my wolf still howling in my chest. I should leave. Every logical thought I possessed was screaming at me to run, to put as much distance as possible between myself and the woman who could never be mine. But my wolf wouldn't stop howling, and I couldn't stop seeing her face. Forward Chapter 2, The Future Luna. The dress was beautiful. White silk, hand-embroidered with silver thread that caught the light like scattered stars. The bodice was fitted, the skirt flowing, the train long enough to require 2 attendants to manage. It probably cost more than a small house. I hated it. Turn, the seamstress commanded, her mouth full of pins, her eyes sharp with professional assessment. She'd been fitting dresses for Pack Lunas for 30 years, and she approached her craft with the intensity of a general planning a military campaign. I turned like the well-trained future Luna I was supposed to be. The motion was automatic. Pivot, pause, hold position while hands adjusted fabric and pins pricked at my skin. I'd done this so many times it barely required conscious thought. My mother made approving noises from the corner of the fitting room. She was perched on a velvet settee, tea in hand, watching the proceedings with the satisfaction of a woman whose long-term plans were finally coming to fruition. My younger sisters, Iris and Violet, because my mother had a thing for flower names, giggled about how romantic it all was. You look like a princess, Violet sighed. She was 16, the age I'd been when my engagement was announced, still young enough to believe that arranged marriages were romantic rather than transactional. "She looks like a Luna," my mother corrected, pride evident in her voice. "Which is exactly what she's going to be." No one asked if I wanted to wear it. No one asked what I thought about any of it. The bonding ceremony was in 3 weeks. 3 weeks until I became Luna of Thornwood Pack, standing beside Alpha Callum as his mate, his partner, his possession. 3 weeks until my life stopped being mine entirely. Not that it had ever really been mine to begin with. I caught my reflection in the full-length mirror, a stranger in white silk, her face carefully composed, her eyes revealing nothing. I'd perfected that expression over 8 years of practice. The serene smile, the graceful posture, the appearance of contentment that revealed nothing of the hollow ache beneath. Perfect future Luna, perfect political asset, perfect pretty doll. I wanted to scream. I was 16 when my father announced the engagement. I remembered that day with crystalline clarity, the way he'd called me to his study, the gravity in his expression, the carefully rehearsed speech about duty and honor and the good of the pack. Callum was young for an alpha then, newly ascended after his father's death, hungry for alliances that would solidify his power. He needed a mate from a strong bloodline, a Luna who could produce heirs and manage his household and look beautiful at his side during political events. I was the beta's eldest daughter, pretty enough to be presentable, educated enough to be useful. A perfect political match. "This is an honor," my father had said, "an opportunity for our family to rise." I'd wanted to ask, an honor for whom? An opportunity for whom? But I'd been 16, trained since birth to be obedient, and the words had died in my throat. 8 years later, they were still stuck there. "The neckline could be lower," my mother suggested, leaning forward to examine the dress with a critical eye. "Show off that lovely collarbone." "Mother," I didn't bother hiding my irritation. "I'm not trying to seduce him. We're already engaged. A Luna should always present her best face. You want to make a good impression." "We've been engaged for 8 years. I think first impressions are past." "Nadia." My mother's tone carried a warning. "This is important." Everything was important. Every dress fitting, every etiquette lesson, every carefully orchestrated public appearance. Important for the pack. Important for the alliance. Important for everyone except me. I need air. I stepped off the platform, ignoring the seamstress's protests about pins still in place, ignoring my mother's sharp intake of breath, ignoring Violet's worried expression. The train tangled around my ankles as I moved, but I didn't care. I just needed to be anywhere that wasn't this room, surrounded by people planning a future I'd never chosen. "Nadia!" my mother called after me. I kept walking. 8 years of performing the perfect future Luna, and I still hadn't mastered the art of suffocating gracefully. Most days I could manage it. The smile, the composure, the appearance of contentment. But some days the cage felt too small, and I had to escape before I started rattling the bars. The compound was busy, it always was, but I knew the paths that were usually empty. Servant corridors, garden trails, the space behind the greenhouses where no one went except the gardeners, and only in the mornings. I found myself heading toward the stables without really deciding to. The pins in my dress pricked my skin with every step, but I didn't stop to remove them. The discomfort felt appropriate somehow, a physical manifestation of the constant irritation that lived beneath my skin. The horses didn't care about politics or bonding ceremonies. They didn't care that I was the beta's daughter, the future Luna, the prize that had been traded for political advantage. They just wanted apples and brushing and the occasional sugar cube. Simple needs I could actually meet. I was cutting through the stable yard when I saw him. The new worker. I'd noticed him earlier in the week. Hard not to, when he was the only person in the compound who actively avoided looking at me. Everyone else stared. Servants, guards, pack members. They all watched me with varying degrees of interest, assessment, curiosity. I was accustomed to being observed, cataloged, discussed. But this man kept his head down like I was the sun, and he'd go blind if he glanced up. It was strange. It was refreshing. Today, he was mucking out a stall, his movements efficient and practiced. He was lean but not scrawny, with dark hair that needed cutting and shoulders that suggested strength he was trying to hide. His clothes were worn, patched in places, clearly the wardrobe of someone who'd learned to make do with little. Something made me stop, study him. There was something about the line of his jaw, the tension in his posture, the way he held himself like a man expecting a blow. He moved like someone who'd learned to be invisible, efficient, quiet, taking up as little space as possible. It reminded me of myself. He finally looked up. Gray eyes, storm cloud gray, with depths that made me catch my breath. There was pain there, old pain. The kind that comes from wounds that never fully healed, from losses that leave permanent scars on the soul. I knew that pain. I saw it every time I looked in the mirror. For a moment, neither of us moved. The world seemed to narrow, shrink, focus down to just the two of us standing in a dusty stable yard. I could hear my own heartbeat, feel my wolf stirring restlessly in my chest, a sensation I'd almost forgotten. She'd been so quiet lately. Then he dropped his gaze and I remembered how to breathe. What was that? I walked past without speaking. What would I even say? Hello, stable hand. Please explain why looking at you makes my wolf sit up and pay attention for the first time in months. Excuse me, but your eyes contain more emotion than my fiancé has shown me in 8 years of engagement? Absurd. But I thought about those gray eyes for the rest of the day. Through dinner with my family, where my father discussed ceremonial logistics like he was planning a military campaign. Through the evening social hour, where I sat beside Callum's empty chair and pretended I missed him. Through the long, sleepless hours of the night, when the cage felt smallest and the future felt most suffocating. Gray eyes, old pain, a man who didn't look at me like I was a title. That night, after the third dress fitting and the second argument with my mother about flower arrangements, I escaped again. The compound was quiet. Most wolves settled into their evening routines, and I slipped through the shadows like I'd been doing since childhood. I told myself I was going to check on my horse. I was lying, and I knew I was lying, but I went anyway. The stables were dim, lit only by a few oil lamps that cast dancing shadows on the walls. The horses were settled for the night, their soft breathing and occasional shuffling creating a peaceful backdrop. He was still there. He was brushing down a mare with careful, competent strokes, his attention focused entirely on his work. He didn't look up when I approached, but I saw his shoulders tense, saw the slight hitch in his movement that said he knew exactly who had just walked in. "You're new here," I said, stepping into the pool of lamplight. A nod. No words. "Do you have a name?" The brush paused. Silence stretched between us, filled only by the soft sounds of the horses. I thought he wouldn't answer. Riven. Just that. No pack name, no lineage, no context. Just a name, offered like a precious thing he wasn't sure he should give away. I'd never heard a name spoken like that before. Like it was a secret. Like it was all he had. "What's yours?" he asked. I blinked. Everyone knew my name. Everyone in the compound. Everyone in the region. Probably everyone who paid attention to pack politics at all. My engagement to Callum had been announced years ago, discussed endlessly, analyzed for its political implications. But this man looked at me like I was just a woman standing in a stable. Like titles didn't matter. Like I got to be a person instead of a position. When was the last time someone had asked my name instead of already knowing it? "Nadia," I whispered. He nodded once, then went back to brushing the horse. No commentary about my family. No mention of my engagement. No shift into the deferential behavior everyone else adopted around me. I should leave. I should go back to the main house and practice being a Luna and forget about the stable hand with the storm gray eyes. I stayed. "You're not from around here," I said, moving to lean against the stall door. "No." "Where are you from?" Silence. That bad? His jaw tightened. That gone. Something in his voice made my chest ache. Gone. Not bad, not difficult, not complicated. Gone. Like whatever place he'd come from no longer existed. I knew about loss. I'd lost my freedom at 16, lost my future the moment my father shook hands with Callum's father. But I'd never lost everything. I still had a home, a family, a place where I belonged even if it felt like a cage. This man had none of that. I could see it in the way he held himself, the way he kept his head down, the way he existed in the margins like someone who expected to be forgotten. "I'm sorry," I said. He finally looked at me again, those gray eyes full of old ghosts and older pain. "Are you?" It wasn't accusatory, it was curious, like he genuinely wanted to know if I meant it or if I was just saying what was expected. "Yes." The word came out fierce, surprising both of us. "I don't know what happened to you, but yes. I'm sorry." He studied me for a long moment. His gaze moved over my face like he was reading something written there, something most people missed because they weren't looking closely enough. Then, impossibly, the corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile. It was more like the ghost of one, the memory of what a smile might look like on a face that had forgotten how. "You're not what I expected," he said. "What did you expect? A princess in a tower. You're more like..." "Like what?" He shook his head. "I should get back to work." I should let him. I should go back to my tower and my silk dresses and my arranged bonding. I should forget about this conversation, forget about those gray eyes, forget about the way my wolf was pacing restlessly in my mind for the first time in months. "Will you be here tomorrow?" I asked instead. He paused. Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, maybe, or uncertainty. Probably. "Then I'll see you tomorrow." I walked away before he could respond, my heart beating faster than it should, my wolf pacing restlessly in my mind. "What are you doing?" I asked myself. I didn't have an answer. But for the first time in 8 years, I felt something other than resigned, and I wasn't ready to let that go. Chapter 3. The Invisible Man. She came back. Every day for a week she found reasons to visit the stables, checking on her horse, escaping wedding planning, needing fresh air. The excuses were thin, we both knew it. A future Luna didn't need to personally inspect her horse's hooves. A beta's daughter didn't need to hide in the servant quarters to avoid her own family. But she came anyway. And every time my wolf sang, I should have stopped her. I should have been cold, distant, driven her away for her own good. She was the future Luna, promised to an alpha, destined for a life that had no room for a packless Omega with nothing to offer. I was nobody. Less than nobody. A ghost with a one-sided mate bond and nothing but heartache to give. But every time she walked through that stable door, my wolf sang. And every time she smiled at me, I forgot why staying away was supposed to matter. On the second day, she asked about the horses. I told her about their temperaments, their preferences, the quirks that made each one unique. She listened like I was saying something important, like my knowledge of horses was worth hearing. On the third day, she brought apples, said they were for the horses, but she gave me one too. It was the first gift anyone had given me in 15 years. I ate it slowly, savoring every bite, and pretended the moisture in my eyes was from the crisp autumn air. On the fourth day, she sat on a hay bale and watched me work. "You don't talk much," she observed, completely unconcerned about the expensive fabric of her dress getting dusty. She'd long since abandoned the pretense of formal visits, showing up in simpler clothes that she could actually move in. Not much to say. Liar. Her voice was light, teasing. It had taken 3 days for her to feel comfortable enough to tease me, and each time she did, something in my chest unclenched a little. You think plenty. I can see it in your eyes. Thinking and saying are different things. Then tell me one thing you're thinking. Right now. I looked at her. Sunlight was streaming through the stable window, catching the gold highlights in her dark hair. She'd worn it down today, loose waves spilling over her shoulders, and I found myself cataloging every strand. She was leaning forward, genuinely curious, like my thoughts actually mattered. To her, maybe they did. I was thinking that she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I was thinking that the mate bond was going to destroy me. I was thinking that I should run and never stop running. I was thinking that her smile was the first warm thing I'd felt in 15 years. I'm thinking, I said carefully, that you shouldn't be here. Why not? Because you're the beta's daughter, and I'm nobody. You're not nobody. You're Riven. That's just a name. Names matter. She stood, brushing hay from her dress, and walked closer. Each step made my heart beat faster, my wolf pace harder. Names are how we know who someone is, what they've survived, who they've chosen to become. I didn't choose my name. I picked it out of the sky one night because I needed something to call myself. I don't know why I told her that. I'd never told anyone that. How I'd lain on my back in a field at 12 years old, starving and alone and so tired of being nothing, and stared up at the constellation until the name burned itself into my mind. She stopped in front of me, close enough to touch, close enough that her scent wrapped around me like a promise I couldn't keep. Wildflowers and thunderstorms. It was stronger when she was near, overwhelming my senses, making it hard to think about anything except closing the distance between us. Then you chose it from the stars, she said softly. That's not nothing. That's beautiful. I didn't have words. She kept doing this, looking at me like I mattered, speaking to me like I was worth speaking to. No one had done that in 15 years. No one had looked past the patched clothes and the downcast eyes and the obvious desperation. But she did. And it was making me forget all the reasons I needed to stay away. Nadia! A horn sounded in the distance. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. He's here, she whispered. He's early. She didn't have to explain who he was. We walked to the stable door together, separately enough to be innocent, close enough to be dangerous, and watched the procession approach. Alpha Callum of Thornwood Pack rode at the front. He was everything I wasn't. Golden hair that caught the sunlight like a crown, broad shoulders that spoke of strength and power, confidence radiating from every line of his body, the easy arrogance of someone who'd never been told no. He sat his horse like he owned the world, and maybe he did. His pack surrounded him, wolves in matching colors, a display of wealth and power that made Ember Ridge's welcoming party look modest by comparison. They moved in perfect formation, disciplined and impressive, designed to remind everyone exactly how powerful Thornwood Pack was. The pack swarmed to greet him. Nadia's family rushed forward, her father and mother, her younger sisters, the pack elders and advisors who would help negotiate the final details of the union. I watched her straighten her spine, smooth her expression, become the future Luna everyone expected. The transformation was painful to witness. The woman who'd been sitting on a hay bale moments ago, teasing me about my silence, disappeared behind a mask of serene composure. Her smile became polished. Her posture became perfect. She became exactly what everyone wanted her to be. A perfect political asset. A prize to be claimed. Callum dismounted and swept her into his arms. "Missed you, mate," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The words were technically correct. They were promised mates, bound by contract, if not by true bond. But something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. His arm wrapped around her waist, possessive, claiming. His hand settled on her hip with the casual confidence of ownership, and he pulled her against his side like she was a trophy to be displayed. My wolf howled. "Mine!" The beast inside me screamed. "She's mine!" But she wasn't. She was his. I turned away before I did something unforgivable. My hands were shaking. My vision had gone red at the edges. The wolf that had been dormant for 15 years was now fully, violently awake, and it wanted blood. I forced myself to walk back into the stables, to pick up the brush I'd dropped, to focus on the repetitive motion of grooming until my hands stopped shaking and my wolf stopped howling. She wasn't mine. She could never be mine. And I needed to remember that. Chapter 4. The Arrangement. The welcome feast was torture. I served food, refilled drinks, stayed invisible. Everything I'd trained myself to do. The servants moved through the great hall like ghosts, unnoticed and unremarkable, and I had spent 15 years perfecting the art of being overlooked. But my eyes kept finding her across the room. Nadia sat beside Callum at the high table, smiling when she was supposed to smile, laughing at his jokes, being everything a future Luna should be. She was dressed in deep blue silk tonight, her hair pinned up in an elaborate style that showed off her neck, her collarbone, the delicate lines of her shoulders. She looked beautiful. She looked miserable. Her smile never reached her eyes. I noticed. No one else seemed to. The pack was too busy celebrating, too focused on the political implications of the union, too impressed by Callum's golden charisma to notice that his promised mate looked like a prisoner at her own engagement party. Or maybe they noticed and didn't care. Callum touched her constantly, his hand on her shoulder, his arm around her waist, his fingers playing with her hair. Each touch was a brand, marking his territory, making sure everyone knew she belonged to him. She didn't lean into the touches. She didn't lean away either. That would be noticed, would cause gossip, would reflect poorly on the alliance. Instead, she held perfectly still, like a statue being posed by someone else's hands. Every touch made my wolf rage. Every smile she gave him felt like a knife in my chest. I moved through the hall, refilling wine glasses and clearing plates, and tried not to watch. Tried not to notice the way her laughter sounded hollow. Tried not to see the way her eyes kept drifting to the windows like she was calculating the distance to freedom. Tried not to feel like I was dying by inches. A servant's job is to be invisible, and I'd been invisible for most of my life. But tonight, invisibility felt like a curse. I could see everything. Her misery, his possessiveness, the elaborate performance they were both putting on. And I couldn't do anything about it. By the time the feast ended, I was shaking with the effort of staying in place. My wolf was clawing at my insides, demanding action, demanding that I claim what was mine regardless of the consequences. But she wasn't mine. And if I forgot that, even for a moment, we'd both pay the price. I slipped out through the servants' entrance and made it to the stables before my control cracked completely. The cool night air hit my face like a slap, clearing some of the fog from my mind, but not enough. Never enough. I threw my bag on the ground and started packing. I had to leave. Tonight. Now. Before I did something that got us both killed. My hands moved automatically, shoving clothes into the worn backpack, checking the hidden pocket where I kept my meager savings. $47 when I arrived. $32 now, after buying food and supplies. Enough to get me to the next territory if I walked fast and didn't eat much. I'd survived on less. "You're leaving." Her voice came from the doorway. I hadn't heard her approach, a dangerous lapse in awareness that should have alarmed me more than it did. I turned. Nadia stood silhouetted against the moonlit stable yard, still in her feast gown. Deep blue silk that made her look like the night sky given form. She'd pulled some of the pins from her hair, and dark waves tumbled over her shoulders. Her feet were bare. She'd left her shoes somewhere along the way. She looked exhausted. She looked beautiful. She looked like everything I wanted and couldn't have. I have to. Why? Because you're my mate and you don't know it. Because watching you with him is destroying me. Because every time he touches you, I want to tear his arms off, and I can't do that. I can't. Because you're promised to him and I'm nobody. Because I don't belong here, I said instead. Nadia stepped into the stable, letting the door close behind her. The moonlight through the windows painted silver stripes across the floor, and she walked through them like she was moving through water. That's not a reason. It's the only one I have." "Liar." She moved closer, and my wolf went silent with longing. "You've been lying to me since we met, pretending you don't care, pretending you don't feel—" "Feel what?" "I don't know." Her voice broke, the composure she'd maintained all night finally cracking. "I don't know what this is, but I know it's something. When I'm with you, I feel like myself. When I'm with him, I feel like a costume." I shouldn't engage. I should grab my bag and walk out. I should put as much distance as possible between us before I did something we'd both regret. But she was standing there in the moonlight, tears shining in her eyes, and I couldn't move. "You're going to be Luna," I said. "You're going to have power, status, everything a wolf could want." "I don't want it." The words came out ragged, torn from somewhere deep. "I've never wanted it. I want—" "What? What do you want?" She looked at me. Those dark eyes, shining with tears she was too proud to let fall. The moonlight caught the moisture, turning it to silver, and she looked like something out of a dream. "I want someone to see me. Just me. Not the beta's daughter. Not the future Luna. Just Nadia." I was so close to her now. Close enough to touch. Close enough to ruin everything. "I see you," I whispered. "I've seen you since the moment you walked through that stable yard." "Then why are you leaving?" "Because I'm trying to protect you. Because I'm nothing and you're everything. Because if I stay, I'll want things I can never have, and wanting will turn to having, and having will destroy us both." But I couldn't say any of that. "Stay," she said. "Please." I should say no. I didn't. "One more week," I heard myself say. Her smile was like sunrise after 15 years of darkness. It transformed her face, chased away the shadows, made her look young and hopeful and free. I was doomed. I knew it. I stayed anyway. Chapter 5. Stolen Moments. 1 week turned into 2. We developed a rhythm, meetings that looked accidental, conversations that went too long, touches that lingered at the edges. I learned her schedule, the times she escaped wedding planning, the routes she took when she needed to breathe, the spots where no one would see us talk. She learned mine too. When I exercised the horses in the north paddock, when I took my meals in the quiet corner of the servants' kitchen, when I climbed to the hayloft at night and watched the stars through the gap in the roof. We were careful. We were cautious. We were two people dancing on the edge of a cliff, pretending we couldn't see the drop below. "My mother wants dove releases," she said one afternoon, perched on the paddock fence while I exercised a chestnut mare. The sun was warm on her face, and she'd closed her eyes against the brightness, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen her. 60 white doves, as if a bird apocalypse is somehow romantic. I led the mare in a circle, watching Nadia from the corner of my eye. "Maybe she hopes they'll carry you away." She laughed, a real laugh, not the practiced performance she gave everyone else. The sound hit me somewhere in the chest and stayed there, warm and persistent. I'd let them. Except I'm afraid of heights. The future Luna is afraid of heights? The future Luna is afraid of a lot of things. Her smile faded, and she opened her eyes to look at me. She just can't show it. I led the horse back to the fence, stopped closer to her than I should. "What are you afraid of?" She was quiet for a long moment. The wind stirred her hair, and she tucked a strand behind her ear with fingers that trembled slightly. "Being trapped," she said finally. "Becoming my mother? Living my whole life performing for an audience that doesn't care about the real me." "What does the real you want?" "I don't know." Her voice was small. "I've never been allowed to find out." I wanted to touch her, cup her face, tell her she could be anything, want anything, and I would burn the world to give it to her. Instead, I said, "Maybe it's time to start figuring it out." She looked at me with something dangerous in her eyes. Hope, possibility, the first green shoots of something that could grow into defiance. "Maybe it is." That night, she met me in the library. It was her idea, a room in the main house that no one used after dark, filled with books that collected dust because no one in the pack had time for reading anymore. She showed me the hidden entrance, a servant's door tucked behind a tapestry, and we sat among the stacks and talked until the moon set. She told me about the books that had saved her, adventures and romances and far-off places she'd never see, stories of women who chose their own paths, who refused to be what others wanted them to be. She'd read them all, memorized passages, clung to them like life rafts in a sea of duty and expectation. I told her about the stars I'd navigated by, the places I'd drifted through, the territories and towns and nameless stretches of wilderness. The loneliness that had become so familiar it felt like a limb. "You've never had a home?" she asked, her voice soft in the darkness. "I had one. Once. A long time ago." "What happened?" I hadn't talked about it in 15 years. The memories were locked so tight I could almost pretend they belonged to someone else. But she was looking at me with such openness, such genuine care, like my pain mattered, like my story was worth hearing. "Fire," I said. "War. I was 10. I survived. No one else did." "Oh, Riven." She reached out, her fingers brushing my arm. The touch sent sparks through my skin, my wolf stirring at the contact. "I'm so sorry." "It was a long time ago." "That doesn't mean it doesn't still hurt." She was right. It did still hurt. It hurt every single day. Every night when I closed my eyes and smelled smoke. Every morning when I woke up reaching for people who'd been dead for 15 years. But sitting here with her for the first time in 15 years, the hurt felt a little lighter. "I should go," she whispered. "If someone finds me here." "I know." Neither of us moved. "Tomorrow?" she asked. "Tomorrow." She slipped out of the library and I sat in the darkness, listening to my heart pound. I was falling in love with her, and it was going to destroy us both. Chapter 6. The Storm. The night sky had been clear when I fell asleep in the hayloft, but I woke to thunder. Rain hammered the stable roof like fists. Lightning turned the darkness into strobing silver, illuminating the rafters in harsh white flashes. The horses were restless, nickering and stamping, and I moved between stalls, soothing them with calm hands and calmer voice. The air smelled like ozone and approaching chaos. The storm had come out of nowhere, the way storms sometimes do in the mountains. One moment clear, the next violent. I'd weathered plenty of storms over the years, in places far less comfortable than this. But I hadn't expected company. The stable door burst open. Nadia stumbled in, soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her face, her dress clinging to curves I shouldn't notice. She was breathing hard, her eyes wild, and she looked like she'd been running. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, crossing to her. "In a storm?" "I needed—" She stopped, shivering, wrapping her arms around herself. Thunder crashed outside and she flinched. "I needed to get out." "In a storm?" I repeated, because the answer made no sense. No one left a warm house to run through a thunderstorm at midnight. The house was suffocating. Her voice shook, and I realized it wasn't just cold. She was trembling all over, her body racked with shivers that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Callum is talking about our children. How many he wants. What we'll name them. Like they're already real, like I've already—" Her voice broke. I moved without thinking, grabbed a blanket from the tack room and wrapped it around her shoulders, my hands lingering longer than they should. "You're freezing." "I don't care. I care." The words came out fiercer than I intended. "Sit by the lamp, I'll make tea." "You have tea?" "I have survival skills. Same thing." She laughed, but it was watery. She sank onto a hay bale near the oil lamp while I boiled water over a small camp stove. The storm raged outside, but the stable was warm, dry, separate from the world. I handed her a chipped cup of tea, our fingers brushing in the exchange. Sparks shot up my arm. I pulled back too quickly, and she noticed, her eyes tracking my movement. We drank in silence, listening to the rain. "Tell me something real," she said eventually. "What do you mean?" "Everyone tells me what they think I want to hear. Pretty lies, comfortable platitudes. Tell me something true." I looked at her, wet, shivering, more beautiful than any wolf had a right to be. The lamplight caught the drops of rain in her hair, turning them to diamonds. "I think about leaving every day," I said. "I think about walking out that gate and never coming back." "Why don't you?" "Because you asked me to stay." She set down her tea. "Riven, you wanted truth." My voice was rough. "That's the truth. I stay because of you." She crossed the distance between us, stood so close I could see the lamplight reflected in her eyes, the rapid pulse beating in her throat. "What if I asked you to do something else?" she whispered. "What?" "Kiss me." Every rational thought evaporated. "Nadia, we can't." "I know we can't. I know it's wrong. I know it's impossible. I know." She took a shaky breath. "But I'm so tired of wanting things I'm not supposed to want. Just once. Please." I should say no. I couldn't. I kissed her. It was gentle at first, questioning, careful, everything I shouldn't allow myself to feel. My lips brushed hers like a question, giving her time to pull back, to change her mind, to remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea. But then she made a sound, a small, desperate noise, and something in me snapped. I kissed her like I was drowning and she was air. Like 15 years of loneliness were burning away in the heat of her mouth. Her fingers tangled in my hair. My hands found her waist, pulling her closer, kneading her closer. The world narrowed to the taste of her, the feel of her, the impossible reality of her wanting me back. I pulled away, gasping. "We can't," I said, though every cell in my body was screaming the opposite. "I know." She pressed her forehead to mine, both of us breathing hard. "I know we can't. But I don't want him, Riven. I want you." The words destroyed every wall I had left. "I want you too," I whispered. "God help me. I've wanted you since the first moment." The storm raged outside. Inside, something far more dangerous was beginning. Chapter 7. Dangerous. After the storm, everything changed. We couldn't stay away from each other. Every stolen moment was a match struck in darkness. Brief, brilliant, doomed to burn out. She'd find me in the stables, in the library, in the shadowed corners where no one looked. We'd talk, touch, kiss like we were stealing oxygen. It was reckless. It was stupid. It was the most alive I'd felt in 15 years. My wolf was changing. I felt it. Power building beneath my skin. Something vast and dormant beginning to stir. My senses sharpened. I could hear conversations from across the compound. I could track Nadia's scent through the entire territory. And when I was near her, something ancient hummed in my blood. "You're different," she said one night, tracing patterns on my palm. We were in the library, surrounded by dusty books and the ghosts of stories untold. Stronger, more present. "I don't know what's happening to me." "I do." She met my eyes. "When you touch me, my wolf wants to submit, and she doesn't submit to anyone. I'm an omega. You're not." She said it with absolute certainty. "I don't know what you are, but you're not what you think." I didn't have an answer. The mystery of my own body was one more thing I couldn't afford to examine. We were in the hayloft, hidden in shadows, when reality came crashing back. "Nadia," Callum's voice echoed through the stable. "I know you're in here." We froze. "Your scent leads straight to this building, love. Stop playing games." She looked at me with panic in her eyes. I pressed a finger to my lips. "Stay quiet, stay hidden," and slipped deeper into the shadows. She climbed down from the loft, brushing hay from her dress. "There you are." Callum's voice was light, but there was an edge beneath it. "Visiting the horses again?" "I like the quiet." You spend a lot of time seeking quiet lately. He moved closer to her. I could hear every footstep, every breath. And you smell different. Like hay. Like... He paused. Like the servants, he finished. You should be more careful, Nadia. You're going to be Luna. You can't afford to smell like the help. I was petting the horses. I'm not accusing you of anything. His tone suggested otherwise. Just reminding you of your position, our position. We represent something bigger than ourselves. I know what I represent. Good. He kissed her cheek. I heard it, and my wolf nearly broke free. Come back to the house. There's planning to do. She went with him. I stayed in the shadows, shaking with rage and fear and something that felt horrifyingly like jealousy. He knew. He didn't have proof, but he suspected. We were running out of time. Chapter 8. Almost. The next 2 days, Nadia was watched. Callum had doubled her escorts, assigned servants to attend her every moment, created a gilded cage around the woman I loved. She couldn't come to the stables. She couldn't slip away at night. She was trapped. I was going insane. My wolf paced constantly, howling at the separation. The bond, incomplete as it was, screamed for her presence. I threw myself into work, mucking stalls until my arms ached, exercising horses until I could barely stand. Nothing helped. On the third night, she found a way. A note slipped into the grain delivery by a sympathetic stable hand. 3 words. Library. Midnight. Please, I shouldn't go. I went. She was already there when I arrived, pacing between the shelves like a caged animal. I can't do this, she said the moment she saw me. I can't keep pretending. You have to. No. She stopped, facing me with fire in her eyes. I've been pretending my whole life. I'm done. Nadia, if Callum finds out, let him find out. She closed the distance between us. I don't care anymore. I don't care about the alliance, or my father's plans, or what anyone thinks I should want. You'll lose everything. I'll lose myself if I stay. That's worse. I caught her arms, holding her at a distance I hated. Listen to me. I have nothing. No pack, no status, no future. If you choose me, you're choosing poverty, exile, a life on the run. I don't care. You should. Why? Her voice cracked. Why do you keep trying to convince me you're not worth it? Because I'm not. The words tore out of me. I'm a ghost, Nadia. I've been dead inside since I was 10 years old. You deserve someone who can give you. You. She cut me off. I deserve someone who sees me. And you're the only person who ever has. I'm nobody. Then stop being nobody. She grabbed my face, forced me to look at her. Give me something to hold on to. Tell me your real name. Tell me where you came from. Let me know you. Silence. The past was a locked door I'd welded shut 15 years ago. Opening it meant facing things I'd spent my entire adult life running from. But she was looking at me with those dark eyes, asking for the one thing I'd never given anyone. The truth. My voice broke. I can't. Something in her expression shattered. Then how can you ask me to give up everything for you? She walked away. I let her go. And I knew, with devastating certainty, that I'd just made the worst mistake of my life. Chapter 9. The truth beneath. I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in my skull. Tell me your real name. Tell me where you came from. I didn't know my real name. I was 10 when everything burned. Riven was a word I'd chosen staring at the night sky, desperate for something, anything, to anchor my existence. But what if there was more? For 15 years, I'd avoided thinking about the before. The memories were too painful, too sharp, too likely to cut me open and leave me bleeding. I'd survived by forgetting. But Nadia was right. If I couldn't give her my past, I couldn't ask her to share my future. I started paying attention to my body's changes. The The heightened senses weren't omega traits. The power building under my skin wasn't normal. And my wolf, dormant for 15 years, was awake now, vast and ancient in ways that didn't make sense. Omegas didn't have wolves like this. So what was I? The library became my obsession. During the day, I worked the stables. At night, I read everything I could find about dormant wolves, traumatic shifts, hereditary bloodlines, and then I found it. True alphas, the old bloodlines, the ruling families, the wolves whose power was inherited rather than fought for. Their wolves could go dormant under extreme trauma, especially in children. The beast would lock itself away for survival, waiting for something strong enough to trigger its awakening. Something like a mate bond. My hands shook as I turned the pages. True alphas were rare. Most bloodlines had died out in the pack wars. One of the last had been Ashfall. The word stopped my heart. I knew that name. I dreamed that name. I woke up screaming that name. I searched the historical records. Found the entry. Ashfall Pack. Destroyed 15 years ago in a territorial dispute. The Alpha family, true Alpha bloodline, was wiped out entirely. All members confirmed deceased except one. The Alpha's son, age 10. Body never recovered. Presumed dead. But what if he wasn't? What if he'd hidden in a cellar while his family burned? What if he'd stumbled into the forest and wandered until he forgot how to be anything but a ghost? What if he'd survived because his mother told him to survive and he'd been running ever since? The book fell from my hands. I wasn't a packless Omega. I was the last heir of Ashfall. I was a true Alpha. And the woman I loved was the only one who could wake the power I'd buried for 15 years. Chapter 10. The name. He buried. Nadia found me in the stables the next morning. I'd been there all night, sitting in the hay, staring at nothing. My world had cracked open, and I was still trying to fit the pieces back together. "I've been looking for you," she said cautiously. "I thought you might have left." "I should have. But you didn't." "No." She sat down across from me, keeping her distance. "I'm sorry about what I said. I had no right to demand." "You were right." She stopped. I took a breath. The deepest breath of my life. "My name isn't Riven. I mean, it is now, it's what I chose. But it's not what I was born with." "What were you born with?" "I don't remember." The admission hurt. "I was 10. After the fire, I forgot a lot. Blocked it out. Survival mechanism, I guess." She moved closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. "What fire?" "My pack." The words scraped out of my throat like broken glass. 15 years ago, enemies attacked during a feast. They set everything on fire. My mother... I had to stop. The memories were flooding back, breaking through walls I'd built for 15 years. "My mother pushed me into a cellar," I continued. "She told me to hide, to survive. Whatever happens, you live." Those were her last words. Riven, I hid. I hid while they killed everyone I loved. And then I ran, and I kept running, and I forgot how to be anything else. Nadia's hand found mine. She didn't speak. She just held on. "Last night, I found something in the library." I looked at her. Records, about a pack called Ashfall. Her breath caught. Ashfall was a true Alpha bloodline. I know. They were all killed, except the Alpha's son, whose body was never found. Understanding dawned in her eyes. "You think you're..." "I don't think. I know." My wolf stirred inside me, vast and powerful, and finally recognizing itself. That's why my wolf was dormant. That's why it woke up when I met you. True alphas need their mate to trigger their full awakening. "Their mate?" She stared at me. "I'm your mate?" "You've always been my mate. The bond just couldn't complete until I started becoming who I really am." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I was falling in love with a nobody," she whispered. "I was ready to give up everything for a stable hand." Does it change things, knowing what I might be? She laughed through her tears. It doesn't change anything. I didn't love you because of what you are. I loved you because of who. Love. She said love. The bonding ceremony is in 3 days, I said. I know. What are we going to do? She cupped my face in her hands. We're going to figure it out, together. For the first time in 15 years, I believed something good might actually be possible. Chapter 11. The Choice. The final preparations consumed Ember Ridge. Flowers arrived by the cartload. Musicians rehearsed in the great hall. Seamstresses made last-minute adjustments to Nadia's gown. The whole pack buzzed with excitement for the bonding that would unite 2 territories. Nadia moved through it like a sleepwalker. You've been distracted, her mother commented. Pre-ceremony nerves, Nadia lied. That's normal. Every Luna feels it. But what Nadia felt wasn't normal. It was the bond, incomplete but undeniable, pulling her toward a man who wasn't her fiancé. It was the certainty that she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. She found me at dusk, in our usual meeting place behind the far paddock. I'm calling it off, she said. Nadia, don't argue with me. I've thought about it. I've weighed the consequences. I know what I'm giving up. Your family will disown you. Probably. Callum will be humiliated. He might retaliate. Let him. You could lose everything. She stepped close to me, close enough that her scent wrapped around me like a promise. If I bond to Callum, I lose myself. And that's the only thing I'm not willing to sacrifice. Your father made a decision for me when I was 16. I get to make my own decisions now. She took my hands. I choose you, not because you might be a true alpha, not because of politics or power, because when I'm with you, I feel like I exist. I love you. The words came out before I could stop them. I've loved you since the first moment. I know. She smiled through tears. I love you too. Then we do this together. She nodded. Together. That night, she went to tell her father. I waited in the stables, pacing, my wolf restless with anxiety. Hours passed. She didn't come back. I went to find her. Her window was dark. A guard stood outside her door. The lady is resting, he said. She's been confined until the ceremony. Confined. Her father had locked her in. Chapter 12. The Eve. I spent the night pacing. The bonding ceremony was tomorrow at noon. Nadia was trapped, and I had no power, no status, no way to reach her. No, that wasn't true anymore. I was a true alpha. The power was there. I could feel it, building beneath my skin, vast and ancient and waiting to be claimed. But I didn't know how to access it, didn't know how to become what I was supposed to be. All I knew was that the woman I loved was locked in a tower and I wasn't going to let her bond to someone else. At midnight, I scaled the wall. The main house was heavily guarded. Callum's wolves patrolled everywhere. But I'd spent 15 years learning to be invisible. I slipped through shadows, climbed vines, reached her window. It was barred. But she was there, waiting, her face pressed against the glass. You came, she whispered. I'll always come for you. I worked at the bars with a knife from my boot. They were old, the screws rusted. One by one, they loosened. Hurry, she breathed. I'm trying. The final bar came free. I reached through, caught her hand, helped her climb out. Can you climb down? In this dress? She was wearing her bonding gown. I'll manage. She ripped the skirt, freeing her legs. I went first, guiding her footholds. We were halfway down when I heard it. Well? A voice from below, cold with amusement. What do we have here? Callum stood in the garden, flanked by guards. The future Luna and a stable hand, he said. How terribly romantic. Nadia's hand tightened on mine. We were caught. Chapter 13. The confrontation. They dragged us to the great hall. The entire pack was roused, summoned to witness whatever spectacle Callum had planned. Wolves lined the walls, whispering, staring. Nadia's parents stood near the front, her mother crying, her father stone-faced. Guards forced me to my knees. Callum kept his grip on Nadia's arm. "I found them fleeing," Callum announced to the assembled wolves. "My promised mate, and a packless Omega." Gasps, murmurs, judgment. "Pack law is clear." Callum's voice rang with righteous fury. "A promised Luna who betrays her bond forfeits her status." He turned to look at me, kneeling on the stone floor. "And the Omega who dared touch her. Death." "No!" Nadia struggled against his grip. "I reject the engagement. I reject—" "You can't reject what was never yours to refuse." Callum's smile was cruel. "You were given to me. You belong to me." "She doesn't belong to anyone." My voice came out stronger than I expected. Callum laughed. "The Omega speaks, how touching." He nodded to the guards. "Kill him." Weapons raised. "Stop!" Nadia's scream echoed through the hall. "I claim him," she shouted. "I claim Riven as my mate, by pack law, by bond right, by my own choice." Shocked silence. Callum recovered first, laughing. "You can't claim an Omega. The bond wouldn't even take. He's beneath you in every way." "He's not beneath anyone." Nadia pulled free of his grip, her eyes blazing. "He's more wolf than you'll ever be." "Prove it." Callum's challenge was casual, confident. "Shift, Omega. Show us your wolf. Let's see if it's even worth it." Something inside me snapped, not broke, awakened. 15 years of dormant power surged through my veins. The shift came without warning, violent, overwhelming, unstoppable. Bones cracked, muscles reformed. I roared, and it wasn't a human sound. When it ended, I wasn't kneeling anymore. A wolf stood in the great hall, massive, silver-white, eyes blazing gold, and power, pure, ancient, undeniable, radiated outward like a shockwave. Every wolf in the room dropped to their knees, including Callum. Chapter 14. The True Alpha. I couldn't control it. The alpha compulsion rolled off me in waves, forcing submission from every wolf in the hall. Callum's face was pressed to the stone, his body shaking with the effort of trying to resist. He couldn't. No one could. True alpha. The words echoed through my skull. "This is what you are." Nadia stood alone, the only wolf still on her feet. Her wolf recognized mine, not as a threat, but as something else. Something she'd been waiting for. "Mate?" The bond snapped fully into place. It was overwhelming, a golden flood of connection, her emotions pouring into me, mine into her. Love, relief, fierce, protective devotion. She shifted without hesitation. Her wolf was smaller than mine, brown and gold, beautiful. She approached slowly, then pressed her muzzle to my throat. Submission, trust, partnership. She rose, stood beside me, faced the kneeling wolves together. My equal. I forced the compulsion to ease, let the wolves rise. Callum stumbled to his feet, face pale with shock and fury. "Impossible," he spat. "You're dead. Ashfall was destroyed." I shifted back. Human again, naked and shaking, but standing. "Ashfall was destroyed," I agreed. "But I survived. And now I'm claiming what's mine." I looked at Nadia, human again beside me. "She's my mate. Does anyone want to argue?" Silence. Callum's jaw worked. He was calculating. I could see it. The political implications, the power dynamics, what challenging a true alpha would cost. "This isn't over," he finally said. "Yes," I replied. "It is." He left. His wolves followed. The engagement was void. A true alpha claim superseded political arrangements. Nadia's father approached, his expression unreadable. "You're Ashfall's heir," he said. "The alpha's son." "I'm Riven." I met his eyes. "I've been running from that name for 15 years. I don't intend to run anymore. What do you intend? I took Nadia's hand. To build something worth staying for. Chapter 15. Home. 3 weeks later, we bonded, not in a great hall with hundreds of witnesses, not with political allies and strategic gifts, just us, in a clearing in the forest under stars I'd navigated by for 15 years. Her mark burned into my throat. Mine burned into hers. The bond completed, golden and warm and forever. We could have done this with witnesses, she said afterward, curled against me in the grass. Made it official, political. I've had enough politics for one lifetime. The packs are still talking. They want to know what the last true alpha is going to do. Nothing. I pulled her closer. I'm not going to rebuild Ashfall. I'm not going to claim territory or gather followers or play power games. Then what do you want? I thought about it. Really thought. A home, I said. Something small. Quiet. Ours. She smiled against my chest. I might know a place. We found it 2 weeks later, a cottage on unclaimed land, far from any pack territory. It needed work. The roof leaked, the garden was overgrown, the windows rattled in the wind. It was perfect. We fixed it together. She planted flowers. I rebuilt the stable. In the mornings, we ran through the forest in wolf form, racing until we collapsed in the meadow, panting and laughing. In the evenings, we sat by the fire and talked about nothing, about everything, about the future we were building from scratch. Some nights, I still had nightmares. I'd wake up gasping, the smell of smoke in my nostrils, screaming voices in my ears. But Nadia was always there, her arms around me, her scent calming my wolf. It's okay, she'd whisper. You're safe. You're home. Home. For 15 years, that word had meant nothing. Now it meant everything. One morning, I woke before dawn. Sunlight was just starting to creep through the curtains. Nadia was still asleep, her hair spread across the pillow, her face soft with peace. I lay there watching her breathe. My hand found the mark on my throat, her mark, and I thought about the boy who'd hidden in a cellar while his world burned. He'd survived because his mother told him to. He'd wandered for 15 years because he didn't know how to stop. He'd given up on ever belonging anywhere. And then he'd met a woman who saw him, really saw him, and everything changed. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't a ghost. I was Riven. I was a true alpha. I was loved. And for the first time since I was 10 years old, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. Nadia stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She smiled when she saw me watching her. You're staring. I'm memorizing. Memorizing what? This moment, in case I forget what happiness feels like. She reached up, touched my face. You're not going to forget. How do you know? Because I'll remind you. She pulled me down for a kiss. Every single day. Outside, the sun was rising. A new day, a new life, a future I'd never dared to imagine. I'd survived the war that killed my pack. I'd wandered for 15 years believing I was nothing. Then I found her, and she made me want to live again.